Hello and welcome. I am Excellite and this is my channel. Today we're going to do another in the segment of the oldest unsolved cold cases in the United States. Before we get started, if you would please give this video a thumbs up. It greatly helps the channel. It only takes a second. And if you are not subscribed and you would like to be, please go ahead and do so. And if you do, go ahead and click that bell if you want, and you'll be notified when my content goes live. All right, let's get going. All right, Texas. On June 1st, 1948, 21-year-old Mary Virginia Carpenter left Texarkana, Texas for Denton, Texas, which is not that far from me, and 200 miles away from Texarkana, Texas, to attend Texas State College for Women. According to Of Misdeeds and Mysteries, cab driver Edgar Ray, who goes by Jack Zachary, picked her up at a train station and then dropped her at Breckenridge Hall at approximately 9 p.m. Zachary would later tell investigators that he saw Carpenter walk to a parked convertible where she spoke familiarly with two men who were in the car. Those two men have never been identified, and Carpenter was never seen again. The missing persons investigation zeroed in on Zachary, who said he'd been home by 10 p.m. after driving Carpenter, and he passed a polygraph. Almost 10 years later in Jefferson, Texas, 200 miles away from Denton, a box of human remains surfaced containing the bones and skull of a woman. This person would have had a similar height as Carpenter and had one leg shorter than the other, just like Carpenter. However, it wasn't the missing college student, because the dental records didn't match. Zachary's wife would later recant her corroboration of her husband's alibi, while the cab driver was arrested and charged with assault in 1957. He submitted to another polygraph test over the Carpenter case, and he passed it before he died in 1984. The next development in the case came in 1998, when a man said he knew where on campus her body was buried. An excavation failed to turn up those remains. And this case has never been solved. Her body has never been found. And we're moving on to Utah. According to the Charlie Project, 15-year-old Reed Taylor Jepson engaged in a pretty normal Sunday afternoon on October 12, 1964. After returning home from church services with his family, he lived near Emigration Canyon in Salt Lake City. He fed his two dogs, and then he decided to take them out for a long walk. Before he left, he told his sister that he'd be back in about 30 minutes. He was going to be home in plenty of time for Sunday supper. A friend of Jepson's saw him and his dogs, both German short-hair pointers, as he was training to bird hunt. They walked past a Catholic church on Wasatch Boulevard around 1 p.m., and the last and only account of where Jepson went after he left home that day is that sighting. There has been no trace of Jepson, zero, and no trace of his dogs, ever. Local authorities were left confused by the disappearance because Jepson left no indication that he was going to disappear, although police also never found any evidence to suggest that Jepson was murdered or the victim of a violent act. He simply vanished. And now we're going to go to Vermont. The death of Orville Gibson remains unofficially unsolved, more than 60 years after the fact, although local legend and conjecture in Newbury, Vermont suggests that the community knows exactly what happened. The facts are these, according to CBS News. On December 31st, 1957, on New Year's Eve, Gibson, who was a wealthy and well-disliked dairy farmer, disappeared. No one seemed too upset about the situation. And then 3 months later, his body, with his hands bound together, surfaced in the Connecticut River, not far from Newbury. Rumors about Gibson's fate and final moments persist to this day, including one that he'd beaten an elderly hired hand, prompting a group of townsfolk to enact mob justice, where they kidnapped him and they threw him into the trunk of a car where he suffocated. His lifeless corpse was then thrown into the river. Vermont state troopers questioned dozens of people, most of whom claimed to have no knowledge of the murder. 2 men were arrested, tried, and acquitted, and Gibson's murder has stayed unsolved ever since. Our last one for today. According to the Charlie Project, the last time that anyone in West Point, Virginia, saw Elsie Mae Rowan was at 11 p.m. on the night of May 20th, 1957. A police officer saw the 16-year-old high school student walking down a street, carrying a couple of suitcases. Her destination? Unknown. Rowan's mother had died 2 years earlier, and at this moment in time, Rowan lived with her adoptive father, who worked a night shift. He didn't arrive home until the next morning, when Rowan would have been at school, so he didn't realize that she was even missing, and therefore he didn't report her disappearance to the authorities until 3 days after she was spotted with the suitcases. No major developments that could lead to answering the question of what happened to Rowan came for nearly 60 years. In 2015, law enforcement officials announced that they'd interviewed a man who lived in West Point and was about the same age as Rowan at the time of her disappearance. The man is yet to be officially tried, or named for that matter, and so this case still remains the oldest cold case. Thank you for coming to my channel. We have only one more segment of the oldest cold cases per state left. So stay tuned for that. Good night.